thought this was interesting. Now, if you or your loved ones are on Instagram or TikTok, especially our children and other people, they're going to see posts like this constantly. This is a guy named Marty Sampson. He's posting on Instagram. He's negative about Christianity. I understand that people have had negative experiences in Christianity. And Christians who have been ugly and evil are to blame for that. But here's what he says. How many preachers fall? Well, many. But nobody talks about it. How many miracles happen? I mean, like you've seen. Well, not many. Well, nobody talks about that. Why is the Bible full of contradictions? See, now this is like you're supposed to just believe that. Why is the Bible full of contradiction? Nobody talks about it. How can God be love, yet send 4 billion people to a place, hell, all because they don't believe? Nobody talks about that. See, this kind of stuff is constantly coming through the pipe. Constantly coming through the pipe. And it's coming through the pipe to people who are already having struggles. They're already having hurt issues or trust issues or whatever with Christian leaders or with somebody in the church who has hurt them or whatever. And this stuff is coming through the pipe constantly. And it's it's helping them push away from the faith. And that's the world we live in. And it's not going to get any better. And it's coming through television programs, it's coming through the radio, it's coming through all kinds of other places. This is the rapper Jahaziel. I would like to be vocal about the negatives. He's talking about the negatives of Christianity because he has a thing against Christianity. But he says, for example, Christianity and its controlling dictatorship. Well, that's some pretty strong words. But the young person that's listening to that or whoever's listening to that says, yeah, they're always trying to control me and tell me what I can do and what I can't do. And I must not do this and I should do that. So yeah, it's historic blood trail. Look at all the Christians, so-called, that have murdered other Christians. It's plagiarized Bible stories. Oh, I didn't know the Bible stories were plagiarized. See, this is part of what's called the history of religion school. So they might go through other religions and they might find a story and it has a few similarities to a Bible story, and so they'll say the Bible plagiarized that story. See, but this tweet or whatever it is, or I think this was on TikTok. What do you call a TikTok thing? That's not a tweet, that's Twitter, right? I don't know what you call it, but it was a post on TikTok, I think. But it's plagiarized Bible stories. If they don't know any better, they think, well, I didn't realize that. It's characters and concepts, the many human errors of the Bible. Oh, I didn't realize that. Well, point them out. See, we're not getting specific. We're not getting into this and showing that right here's an error or right there's an error. We're just making this statement. It's contradictions. See, but let's talk about those contradictions that you think are there. Let's visit about that a little bit. The brutal nature of its God. See, this is very common. That God that would kill the Amalekites in 1 Samuel 15, or that God that would punish people by thousands dying in the book of Numbers, you know, that brutal God. Its involvement in the slave trade. Okay, now, wait. Christianity is involved. No, wait a minute. There have been Christians, so-called, that have been involved in the slave trade. What's that got to do with the validity of what Jesus said and Christianity itself? See, but yes, you know, there's also been Buddhists involved in the slave trade and Muslims involved in the slave trade and Shintoists involved in the slave trade and any other thing you could mention involved in the slave trade, none of which makes any of it right, okay? The Crusades. Well, Crusades were brutal. Crusades were bad. Okay, in 1099, I think it was, the first crusade, Urban II, maybe, somewhere in that neighborhood. And European, am I right, Mr. Moss? Okay, Mr. Moss is checking me. Man, you check everything I say back there. Okay, yeah, he can't help himself. But anyway, roughly 1099, they send these European kings and their armies, and they rape and pillage across the lands that they go, and they go to the Holy Land, and they do more raping and pillaging and slaughtering, and they slaughter Muslims, and they try to take back the Holy Land and all that kind of stuff. They were, quote, Christians. Well, they were only in the loosest sense Christians. They might have had a Christian T-shirt. I don't know that they had T-shirts back there. What could I, Chuck, maybe a Christian male coat or something like that. But they certainly weren't acting like Christians, and they certainly weren't following a Christian ethic and all that kind of stuff, see, when they did all this. But yes, you can point to many immoral things that were done in the Crusades. All right? That does not necessarily invalidate Christianity. The Inquisition. See, the Inquisition was when the Pope, whoever was Pope at the time, empowered the Jesuits to stamp out heresy by any means, including torture and death. And so the Jesuits would go and they would arrest people, and they would put hot irons on them and stretch them and do all these things and make them confess whether they were guilty or not and kill them. That happened all over the place, but that's got absolutely nothing to do with Jesus or the Bible or the New Testament. It was done in the name of Christianity, but that's not what Christianity is. But yes, the Inquisition did all kinds of bad stuff, from the Huguenots to the Anabaptists to the, you name it. Witch hunts. Yes, there were witch trials and so forth. And we had that even in this country. And he says, you get the drift. But when our young person's, trying to push away, or whoever it is, and they're pushing away from Christianity, and they read this Instagram post and three others like it, and then one of their favorite rappers posts this, and that's put on them, then they don't know how to get into each one of those things. And so their faith is, they're just left feeling negative about Christianity because the cool people feel negative about Christianity, see? And maybe mom or dad doesn't have a good enough answer for some of these things. I don't know. But this is why we need to more directly address things like this. And one class isn't going to do it. But let's talk about, for a few moments, some positive things that we can suggest for ourselves or other people who are going through this. First, we as Christian parents, grandparents, etc., we need to realize that truth has nothing to fear. That if we're confident in the truth, we shouldn't mind anybody asking any question or bringing up any doubts or putting anything like that, because if it's true, then we should be able to defend it. If it's not true, then there's no defense for it, see? But truth has nothing to fear. Okay, I believe that with all my heart. Then, and you can't just have an argument with somebody about this, but you might say, well, honey, I'm not sure the Bible really teaches that. Have you looked into that? And maybe you should take a look at this or take a look at that and see what you think, and maybe help them see that some of the things that people are saying to them that the Bible teaches, it doesn't really teach at all if they look into it, and maybe not in the way that's being put across that it teaches. So to people who are going through this, make sure that the things you are doubting are things the Bible really teaches. Let me say another thing here. If you are a supernaturalist, if you believe in your worldview that supernatural is possible, that God does supernatural things and has done supernatural things, if that is your conviction, then why should you apologize for that? Why should you be ashamed if you believe in the supernatural? You see what I'm saying? There's no reason to be ashamed of that. Just say, yes, I believe that God can do supernatural things. Now, this is a key one here. She says, separate problems with your church or with Christians from problems with biblical Christianity. Now, most of the people that you find arguing the case for deconstruction, for faith deconstruction, they don't really know a great deal about the Bible. They don't know a great deal about the Bible. They do know that there have been Christians, so-called, that have been very hypocritical and have disappointed them and have hurt them and have, and in Romans 2:24, Paul was talking about Christians who live sinful lives, and he says, because of you, the name of God is being blasphemed among the Gentiles. And that's still happening today. See? But biblical Christianity, that is the teachings of Jesus, the teachings of the apostles, that biblical Christianity is separate from the sins and evils of Christian people. Right? There is a perfect teaching of Jesus and his ambassadors, and that's not the same as people who violate that teaching. Right? So Christianity is the biblical teaching itself, not hypocritical people that claim the name Christian and don't live it. Isn't it Revelation chapter 3, in one of the churches that Jesus says, you have a name that you live, but you are dead. So you've got the name of Christ, but you're not living that name. That's always been a problem, hasn't it? But that doesn't mean Christianity itself is invalid. So maybe in talks with people that you love or with yourself in your own mind, can you separate Christianity from people who violate it? Let me just confess to you. I struggle with this in my own mind. Not doubting the faith. What I struggle with is people that are supposed to be Christians that are hypocritically living it and walking around like they are Christian leaders or whatever, and yet are not. And it's very frustrating. And yet I believe in Jesus, and I believe in his teaching, and I believe in his word, and I believe in his truth. But it's frustrating when other people are frustrated with that. And there's only one person I can control. Guess who that is? And it's hard enough to work on this old fat guy right here. See? So separate problems with your church or with Christians from problems with biblical Christianity. That's a mature thing. Don't you think? It's a mature thing to be able to separate the behavior of certain people from what the Bible teaches. Okay? And we're all imperfect. Okay. Be willing to work to resolve your questions. Now, some of you are like, some of you will like research something out to the end. You will just keep looking and keep searching. And if you have a question, you'll just keep researching it out. But a lot of people who are going through this process, they don't have the inclination to really search things out to the end and really look at all sides and see what is true. See what I'm saying? Because they're moved along by emotions, or they're moved along by circumstances or by the crowd that they're in, and they're not determined enough to search things out to the end to see if they're true. And so this lady, Natasha Crane, some of our ladies are reading her book, but she encourages people to be willing to put in the work to resolve your issues. Now, is that really true? Let me look up different sites. By the way, how many of you are Googlers? How many of you use Google? Almost everybody uses Google. Okay. So if you go on Google and you do a search, you know this, and please don't think I'm talking down to you, but please consider this. The first few things that come up on your search will almost invariably lead you down a more postmodern path, because that's the philosophy that the Google people have. They'll lead you down the popular postmodern path. So you need to, when you do a Google search, learn to ask the question in several different ways. For example, if you just put in carbon-14 dating, you look up stuff and they'll give you all the positives for it. But if you look up problems that have been detected in carbon-14 dating and you look that up, then you'll begin to see some of the research on the findings of what's wrong with it. And you need to ask the question 4 or 5 times, and finally you'll get down to the 1 or 2 or 5 sources that they'll let you see where they've brought up things against that. If you don't do that, you'll never see the other side of it. Do we all already realize this or not? Okay? So you can't just ask one question and think you've found the answer. I've got grandsons that are they're boom, like this, you know. So we're having a discussion with my grandsons, and I'll bring up a question, they'll go boom, 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 and they'll ask it whatever the way they want to, and then they'll say, here, see, right here's the answer. First thing that came up, Papa, there's your answer right there. I'll say, try asking it this way. You know, might come up a little bit different. But most people don't do that second or third or fourth question. This is the world that we're living in. All right, so search it out and go beyond Google. All right, then this is one that I think is real healthy. If you're going to discard Christianity, if you're tired of Christianity and you're going to discard Christianity, then talk to me about what your alternative is. What is going to be your philosophy of life, your way of living that is an alternative to Christianity? And how is that going to work for you? When you start really thinking about, this is my alternative, and where does it take me, and what does it offer me, and where does it leave me? That's worth thinking about. If not this, then what? And a lot of times you're left with nihilism. You're left with Nietzsche, and that's pretty much it. And then pray and read the Bible. That sounds kind of what's the word I'm trying to look for? It almost sounds dismissive, but it's not. One of the biggest issues with people that are going through this is they're not reading the Bible. And if they are reading it, they're doing this number. And they're reading a couple of words and say, oh, that's dumb, and put it up. But they really haven't read it. They really haven't read the whole thing. They really haven't read the whole messages. They really haven't understood what's being criticized. See, the more you understand the Bible and you really read it and you really digest it, the more you're going to be convicted by it. The less you read it and you just listen to tweets and Instagram stuff like this and like this, then the more confused you're going to be. Okay? So, is Christianity, I mean biblical Christianity, is it a cultural movement or is it a countercultural movement? We're definitely countercultural. If you choose to walk the narrow path, there's going to be more people by far on the broad path. You're going to be in the minority. That's the nature of the beast. See, so I feel like that if you want what I would call a good introduction. This book, Faithfully Different by Natasha Crane, is a good generalized introduction to this kind of stuff. Some of the ladies are reading it. Not necessarily every single thing in the book is just exactly right, but it's a really good introduction to this whole thing. It'd be good for you to just read over coffee, and it's a good cultural review of this kind of stuff. Who would like to make a comment or a question before we adjourn here in a minute? This is kind of the summary of what we've been talking about, and we'll have to come back to it in a different way later. Anybody? Barry?
We are products of a generation that were taught that the Bible means what it says, and you shoot it down.
Yeah.
You know, and then if you really push them, you might get the scripture that says all word is God breathed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was how they resolved our questions about that. And I think in some regard we pass that on to our children. The real message is today for parents of young children is to really be open about their finding their own faith in Jesus, their own faith in God. It doesn't happen. You can't leave it to them as an inheritance. They've got to come to their own conclusion. We haven't fostered that very well in the past.
Yeah, and what Barry's saying is just telling them the Bible says it and you're not supposed to doubt it and the Bible's inspired, that's not going to get it these days, because the doubts are going to be coming out because they're being inundated with doubts. So we're going to have to be better at doing what Peter said, be ready always to give an answer. That word is apologia, which means a reasonable explanation, a reasonable defense. Why do we believe the Bible is inspired? What evidence is there for that? Why do we believe in God? What are some alternative ways of looking at some of these things that cause them difficulties? And so we can't just say, the Bible tells me so. Even though that's true, we can't just say that's case closed and you ought to believe it, because it's a new world we're living in. Anybody else? Yep, Mark? Yeah, the assertions that the evil one puts out there in these tweets and all that.
There's nothing new under the sun. I mean, you go back to the garden, and that's exactly how the serpent is creating
Yeah.
levels of doubt within the
Yeah, did God say you can't eat of any of the trees? No, he didn't say that.
you surely would not die.
Yeah.
That technique is always been there. It will always be there.
Yeah.
That's why Jesus gives us such an example of how to handle that.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, when we're dealing with people that are trying to struggle or struggling with just the reality of their relationship in Jesus.
Yeah. And while all that's old, like Mark said, these types of attacks by Satan are nothing new, the internet's really new. And, and the internet has just ramped it up to like Super Mario times I don't know what, and it's hitting everybody from all sides all the time, and that puts us in a new ball game. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, I think that's it. And God bless you, and I'll talk to you later.